everyone, Leanne here from Jaded Blossom, and I have some fun wedding cards to share with you today. Hey, so I'm using Jaded Blossom's Embellishment Clusters dies, their fancy wedding stamp set, their Build-A-Booth Valentine add-ons, their rectangle dies, and these scalloped rectangle dies, and these scalloped circle dies. And I'm using the wedding 6x6 Echo Park pad along with the matching solids. Okay, so I have some white paper tray ink cardstock that I cut into an A2 sized card front. So 4.25 by 11, scored at 5.5 inches with my Martha Stewart scoreboard and my Teflon bone folder. And then I'm going to take a sentiment from that Jaded Blossom Fancy Wedding stamp set and stamp it in VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I used a misty corner to get it straight. So it says, wishing you a lifetime of love and happiness. And then this one just says, congratulations. I'm actually making 8 wedding cards. I realized I didn't have any in my stash really, so I thought I'd had to make a few wedding cards just to fill up the stash. So there's the congratulations. Next, I'm going to add a strip of paper to the inside. These are just 1-inch strips from that same Echo Park Wedding 6-inch pad. And I do trim off the overhang with a pair of scissors. I did use ATG tape just to stick that down. I put it 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. It's kind of where I like to put it. Then here is another one with a strip of paper. There we go. And then I do trim off that overhang with a pair of scissors. There we go. So I do use a Post-it just to, make sure that that black ink doesn't smush all over the place. Next, I cut out a scalloped rectangle die. This is the 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. And I'm going to stick that down onto my card base. So I just used some of the Echo Park matching solids for this. So this one's a cream one, or kind of like a beigey. Then the stitched rectangle die that I use for all my cards is 3 1/4 by 4.5 inches. And I'm just going to layer that down, like I said, using my ATG tape again. And I use the exact same layout for all my cards. It just makes it fast and easy. And then you'll see pictures of them all at the end. Although I won't show you, I won't show you myself putting every single one of them together, but you get the gist. So there we go. I'm just using an adhesive eraser there. It's your friend. There we are. Next, I did do some stamping onto paper tray ink white cardstock with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink using sentiments from that fancy wedding stamp set. And then I cut them out with 1 3/4 inch circles. These are just some plain circle dies that I have. And I did cut out this fun little banner, and that's from the Valentine add-ons. Build-A-Booth Valentine add-ons. I cut that out of Recollections Gold Mirror cardstock, the same as the scallop circle. I'm not sure if I said the scallop circle is a 2-inch scallop circle from Jaded Blossom. I don't think I mentioned that. And then the 1 3/4 inch plain circle was what I cut the sentiment out of. Now I went ahead and I cut out all the little hearts from that Build-A-Booth Valentine add-ons out of solids and pattern paper for all the different cards that I made. And I'm just laying that on using my Bearly Art glue and my reverse tweezers. Isn't this fun? There we go. And I do weight it down with an acrylic block. Next, I will pop up my sentiment. And I do use different sentiments on these cards just for fun. Same layout though to keep everything very simple. I find that when you want to make a bunch of cards, choose a layout and stick to it. And then you can just do all your die cutting and do all your assembling all at once. So I'm just layering up my little sentiment there on your wedding day. Then I'm going to add a little heart that was cut out of Jaded Blossom's Embellishment Cluster dies using that Recollections Gold Mirror cardstock. So here I'm putting another one together. You'll notice that this one has a pink paper for that scalloped rectangle, pink with a pattern from that 6-inch pad. And I do lay that down onto my A2 size card front, just lining it up. And then I'm going to use that fun little punch buggy wedding background next. And remember, I'm using the exact same dies, the exact same paper, different patterns. There we go. So I'm just going to put together this guy now. And I'll lay that down using ATG tape again. I think it's a really pretty pad and easy to use to make a bunch of, wedding cards. There we go. Just using that adhesive remover again, using that same Goldmere cardstock from Recollections and that same Bearly Art glue. And I kind of swag it from the upper right to the middle left there. And I do weight it down with an acrylic block. Next, I'll add the sentiment on this guy again. There we go. Okay, so now I'm adding on this To Have and to Hold, which is another great sentiment from that fancy wedding stamp set. There we go. And I'm going to add that to my background with that same Stampin' Up! Dimensionals, to have a bit of a dimensional look. So I tend to go for, like, the border is more of a solid feel, and then the pattern paper of the stitched rectangle is a pattern. And then I chose the heart color. I'm trying to choose something that will pop on the background. So that's how I kind of came up with things. So I'm going to add a little heart from that, from the embellishment cluster dies to that little sentiment. So now I'll add my little hearts on here. And these are pattern paper from that 6-inch pad. I went with like a black plaid, which was kind of a fun look. And I'm just adding those on. And I think those pop amongst those little love bugs. So just adding on my little hearts there. And I do weight it down with an acrylic block. So now I'm going to be adding on some of these embellishment cluster dies in groups of 3. So I'll have 3 in the lower left and then 2 above my sentiment there on the right. There we go, using my Studio Katia embellishment wand and some Bearly Art glue. And I do weight them down. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with this other one here. So when I made these cards, basically I just did a bunch of die cutting and then assembled everything. I just filmed the 2, but I'll show you here at the end all the other designs that I made. So there we go. And that is what it looks like. Super fun. And that's the inside. There we go. And that's the other one there. And then there's some more different patterns, right? There's another different pattern. All these different patterns. And just, all with those nice wedding backgrounds. So that's all. So thank you so much for stopping by. Be sure to hop on over to the Jada Blossom blog, be inspired by the team, the Jada Blossom store, to get your hands on these amazing products. And thanks as always for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. And make sure to come back again and watch another. Bye, everybody.